Zoltek pressed his thin fingers against the cold metal wall of the transport ship as it moved through space toward the human station. His skin was pale blue, and his large black eyes could see things that humans could not. He had done this job many times before. New species would ask to join the Galactic Council, and he would study them to see if they were good enough. Most species were not very interesting. They were either too weak, too stupid, or too dangerous. The humans would probably be boring too. Zoltek had read their files during the long journey. They lived for only about 80 years, which was very short. They had weak bodies that broke easily. Their technology was simple compared to other species in the galaxy. The transport ship captain, a tall gray alien with 4 arms, spoke to Zoltek through the intercom. "We will arrive at the human station in 10 minutes, observer. Are you ready?" "Yes," Zoltek replied in his quiet voice. He picked up his electronic tablet that contained all his notes about humans. Their planet was called Earth, and it was mostly covered in water. They had only been traveling in space for about 60% of their years, which was nothing compared to species like his own Velteran people, who had been exploring space for thousands of years. The human station appeared outside the window. It was called Haven Station, and it looked very basic. The metal was dull gray, and the design was simple. There were no beautiful decorations or artistic shapes like the stations built by more advanced species. Everything looked practical, and barring Zoltek gathered his belongings and walked to the docking area. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and he stepped into the human station. The first thing he noticed was how clean everything was. The floors were polished, and there was no trash anywhere. This surprised him a little because many primitive species were messy. 3 humans were waiting for him in the docking bay. 2 were females, and 1 was male. They were all wearing simple blue uniforms with small metal badges on their chests. The humans were smaller than Zoltek expected, barely reaching his chest height. The first female stepped forward and smiled at him. Zoltek knew that showing teeth was how humans expressed friendliness, though it looked strange to him. "Welcome to Haven Station, Observer Zoltek," she said. Her voice was higher than his own. "My name is Hannah Kim, and I am the diplomatic liaison for this sector." The male human moved closer and also smiled. "I am Jinho Park, Chief Technology Officer. We have been preparing for your visit for many weeks." The third human, another female with shorter hair, introduced herself as Dr. Yuna Lee. "I lead our science division. We are very honored that the Galactic Council has sent someone as experienced as you to evaluate our species." Zoltek studied their faces. They seemed genuine in their happiness to meet him, but he had learned not to trust first impressions. Many species tried to hide their true nature during evaluations. "Thank you for your welcome," he said formally. "I require a complete tour of your facilities and access to your historical records. The Council needs to understand your species before making any decisions about membership." Hannah nodded eagerly. "Of course. We have prepared comprehensive presentations about our society, our technology, and our military capabilities. We want to be completely honest with you." As they walked through the corridors of the station, Zoltek made mental notes. The walls were made of simple steel and painted white. The lighting was bright but not harsh. Everything seemed functional rather than beautiful. The humans they passed in the hallways all stopped to look at him with curious eyes, but none seemed afraid. This was unusual. Most primitive species were either scared of or too excited about meeting advanced aliens. Jinho led them to a large room with a round table and comfortable chairs. One chair was clearly designed for someone with Zoltek's body shape, which showed that the humans had done their research about his species. This attention to detail was slightly impressive. "Before we begin the formal presentations," Hannah said as they sat down, "would you like some refreshments? We have studied Velteran dietary needs and prepared some foods that should be safe and pleasant for you." Zoltek was surprised again. Most species forgot about such details. That would be acceptable, he replied. Dr. Yuna brought him a small cup filled with a warm, blue liquid that smelled like the flowers from his home planet. He took a careful sip and found it quite pleasant. How did you obtain the ingredients for this? He asked. We synthesized them based on chemical analysis of Velteran food preferences found in the Council's public databases, Jinho explained. It took our chemistry team 3 days to get the formula right. Zoltek made another note on his tablet. The humans were being very thorough, but this could just be because they were desperate for Council membership. Most primitive species were eager to gain protection from the more dangerous species in the galaxy. Shall we begin? Hannah asked, activating a holographic projector in the center of the table. Zoltek settled back in his chair, expecting a boring few hours of basic presentations about human achievements. He had no idea that everything he thought he knew about humans was about to change forever. The presentations had been going on for 3 hours when the first alarm sounded. Zoltek was looking at boring charts about human population growth when a loud noise filled the room. The sound was sharp and painful to his sensitive ears. Hannah immediately stopped talking and pressed a button on the table. Control room, this is Diplomatic Suite 7. What is the status of that alarm? A voice crackled through the speaker. All diplomatic personnel report to Command Center immediately. This is not a drill. Code red emergency in progress. Zoltek felt his throat sacs inflate with worry. Code red meant immediate danger. He had only heard that level of alarm twice in his long career, and both times many people had died. What does this mean? He asked Hannah. We need to go to the command center right away, she replied, her face suddenly serious. The friendly smile was gone, and her voice had become sharp and focused. Please follow us quickly. They left the meeting room and walked fast through the corridors. The station was suddenly full of activity. Human crew members were running in different directions, but Zoltek noticed something strange. They were not panicking. Every human he saw was moving with purpose, like they had practiced this many times before. The command center was a large room filled with screens and flashing lights. In the center was a raised platform where a human male in a dark blue uniform stood looking at the biggest screen. His name tag said Captain Dojin Kim. Report, Captain Dojin said to a female officer at a control station. 17 vessels just came out of hyperspace at the edge of our system, the officer replied. Her name tag said Lieutenant Sujin Choi. Computer analysis confirms they are Murgath raiders. Heavy cruiser-class ships with destroyer escorts. Zoltek's blood became cold. The Murgath were one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They were 3 times larger than humans, with sharp claws and teeth like knives. They traveled in huge fleets, attacking peaceful planets and eating any intelligent life they found. Even advanced council species were careful around the Murgath. On the main screen, Zoltek could see the enemy ships. They looked like giant metal insects with sharp points and dark colors. The ships were massive compared to the small human vessels floating around the station. They are sending a message, Captain, another officer reported. Put it through, Captain, Dojin ordered. The screen changed to show a terrifying Murgath commander. Its face was covered in scars, and its teeth were stained with what looked like blood. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. Little meat creatures, the Murgath snarled. You float in space like gifts waiting to be opened. We give you one of your time periods to surrender your station and prepare yourselves for consumption. Resist, and we will make your death slow and painful. The other aliens in the command center began to panic. Zoltek saw a felonary trade representative, shaking with fear. 2 Kethlan scientists were already requesting emergency evacuation to their ships, but the humans were different. Captain Dojin looked at the screen with calm eyes. He did not seem afraid at all. This confused Zoltek. Any intelligent species should be terrified when facing the Murgath. Open a response channel, Captain Dojin said quietly. Channel open, sir. Captain Dojin looked directly at the Murgath commander on the screen. His voice was polite, but firm. This is Captain Dojin Kim of Haven Station. You are in Council-protected space without permission. I order you to leave immediately. The Murgath commander laughed, a horrible sound like breaking glass. Order? You tiny thing gives orders to us. We have destroyed species much stronger than yours. Your little metal box will make fine scrap after we finish eating everyone inside. I see, Captain Dojin replied calmly. He turned to his crew. Lieutenant Choi, please activate battle stations. Lieutenant Park, prepare all weapon systems. Commander O, launch all fighter squadrons and ready the boarding teams. Zoltek watched in amazement as the humans began moving around the command center with quick, precise actions. They were not running away or begging for mercy. They were preparing to fight. A female officer with lieutenant stripes approached Captain Dojin. Sir, all civilian evacuation procedures are ready. We can have the diplomatic personnel off the station in 12 minutes. No, Zoltek heard himself say. Everyone turned to look at him. I need to stay and observe. This is part of my evaluation of your species. Captain Dojin nodded. Very well, observer. Please stay close to the emergency exits. He turned back to his crew. How long until they reach us? 18 minutes at current speed, Lieutenant Choi reported. Good. That gives us time to prepare our welcome. Captain Dojin looked at the screen where the Murgath ships were growing larger. Then he smiled, and Zoltek felt a chill run down his spine. The smile was not friendly like the ones he had seen earlier. This smile was cold and sharp, like a blade. For the first time since arriving at the station, Zoltek began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake about these humans. Outside the station, 17 Murgath warships moved closer through the darkness of space, expecting an easy victory over weak prey. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The battle began 15 minutes later. Zoltek watched from the command center as the human ships moved into position. There were only 8 human vessels against 17 Murgath warships. The enemy ships were much larger and had more powerful weapons. Any reasonable species would surrender or try to run away. The humans did neither. All ships, this is Captain Dojin. The captain spoke into his communication device. Remember your training. Protect the station and each other. Make every shot. Count on the main screen. Zoltek saw the first exchange of weapons fire. The Murgath ships shot bright red beams of energy at the human vessels. The humans fired back with simple projectile weapons that looked primitive compared to the alien energy weapons. Then something happened that made Zoltek's 4 hearts nearly stop beating. The human ship called Soul's Pride suddenly accelerated directly toward the largest Murgath cruiser. Instead of firing weapons, the ship rammed straight into the enemy vessel's engine section. Both ships exploded in a brilliant flash of light and metal. Did that ship just destroy itself on purpose? Zoltek asked, his voice shaking. The crew of Soul's Pride sacrificed themselves to damage the enemy flagship. Lieutenant Choi replied without taking her eyes off her control panel. Her voice was calm, as if she was reporting the weather. Before Zoltek could process this information, 2 more human ships performed similar attacks. They flew directly into Murgath vessels, causing massive explosions. The humans were using their own ships as weapons. This is madness, whispered the Felonary Trade representative who was still in the command center. They are committing suicide. But Zoltek began to see a pattern. Each human ship that destroyed itself took out important parts of the enemy vessels. Engines, weapon systems, communication arrays. The human captains were not just dying randomly. They were choosing exactly how to hurt the enemy the most. Boarding teams away, reported a male officer named Lieutenant Sako. Marines have successfully breached the Murgath flagship. On one of the smaller screens, Zoltek watched something that would give him nightmares for years. Human soldiers in simple metal suits were floating through space toward the damaged Murgath ships. They carried basic kinetic rifles and simple tools. The Murgath ship interiors were filled with poisonous gas that would kill most species in seconds. The temperature inside was hot enough to melt metal, but the humans kept moving forward in their basic protective suits. Through the ship's internal cameras, Zoltek watched a human marine named Corporal Hyene fighting 3 Murgath warriors in a narrow corridor. The aliens were twice his size with natural weapons, like claws and acid spit. The human had only a simple rifle and determination. One Murgath slashed at Hyene with claws that could cut through steel. The human's left arm was badly injured, but he did not stop fighting. He switched his rifle to his right hand and kept shooting. When another Murgath knocked him down, Hyene pulled out a small explosive device. "If I'm going down, you're coming with me," the Marine said calmly, and detonated the device. The explosion killed the Marine and all 3 Murgath warriors. It also created a hole in the ship's hull that caused massive damage. Zoltek realized he was shaking. Why do they keep fighting when they know they will die? Captain Dojin overheard his question. Because someone has to. If we don't stop the Murgath here, they will attack other peaceful species. We cannot let that happen. On the main screen, the battle continued. More human ships were destroyed, but each loss caused terrible damage to the enemy fleet. The Murgath, despite their size and strength, were beginning to retreat from the human boarding teams. "Sir, we're receiving communications from the enemy flagship," Lieutenant Choi reported. "The Murgath commander wants to speak with you. Put him through." The scarred face of the Murgath commander appeared on screen again, but now he looked confused and angry instead of confident. "What kind of creatures are you? Your warriors fight like demons. They show no fear of death." Captain Dojin's expression was cold. "We are humans. We fight to protect what we love. When you threaten our home, you make us very dangerous." "This is impossible," the alien commander snarled. "No weak species fights like this. You should be begging for mercy." "We don't beg," Captain Dojin replied quietly. "We fight until we win, or until there is nothing left of us to fight with. Your choice is simple. Leave now, or we will destroy every one of your ships." Zoltek looked at the tactical display. The humans had lost half their fleet, but the Murgath had lost even more. Several enemy ships were crippled or destroyed. The remaining human vessels were damaged but still fighting. What terrified Zoltek most was that the humans were not slowing down. If anything, they seemed to be fighting harder as their losses increased. Every death made them more determined, not less. The Murgath commander seemed to realize this too. For the first time in the battle, fear appeared in his eyes. "This is not over, humans," he growled, but his voice lacked the confidence from before. "Yes, it is," Captain Dojin said simply, and somehow Zoltek believed him. The battle was still going on when Zoltek found himself in the medical bay. He had followed a group of wounded human soldiers there, trying to understand what he was seeing. The medical area was filled with injured people, but also with something that shocked him even more. Murgath prisoners were being treated. Alongside human wounded, Dr. Yuna Lee was working on a large Murgath warrior who had been captured during the boarding action. The alien's arm was badly burned, and green blood was flowing from several cuts. The same species that had come to eat every human on the station was now receiving medical care from human doctors. "Why are you helping them?" Zoltek asked Dr. Yuna, as she carefully cleaned the Murgath's wounds. "They came here to kill and eat all of you." Dr. Yuna looked up from her work. Her hands were covered in both red human blood and green Murgath blood. "On my world, we have an old saying. Even the tiger that hunts you is still a living creature that can feel pain. We fight them when we must, but we do not become monsters ourselves." The Murgath warrior looked at her with confusion in his yellow eyes. You heal me so you can torture me later?" he asked, in broken human language. "No," Dr. Yuna replied gently. "I heal you because that is what doctors do. When the fighting stops, you will be returned to your people." Zoltek moved to another bed, where a human Marine was being treated for severe injuries. The man's name tag said Commander Kiwan Park. His left leg was badly damaged, and his face was covered in cuts, but he was still conscious. "Commander," Zoltek said carefully, "I have been observing your species for several days. I thought I understood humans, but this battle has confused me. Your people fight with a fury that terrifies even the Murgath, but then you show mercy to your enemies. How is this possible?" Commander Kiwan smiled weakly as a nurse worked on his injuries. "Observer, tell me something. What do you see when you look at human history in your files?" Zoltek thought about the data he had studied. "I see constant warfare. Your species has been fighting each other for thousands of years. Wars over land, resources, beliefs, and power. Very few periods of true peace." "That's right," Commander Kiwan nodded. "We have been fighting since we learned to make tools. Do you know what that taught us? That you are violent and dangerous?" Zoltek guessed. "No. It taught us that fighting is sometimes necessary, but it should never be easy. Every war costs something precious. Every death matters. So when we fight with everything we have, but we never forget why we started fighting in the first place." Through the medical bay window, Zoltek could see another human ship exploding as it rammed into a Murgath vessel. The sacrifice was calculated and precise, designed to cause maximum damage to the enemy's weapon systems. "Your people are dying out there," Zoltek observed. "Yet everyone here seems calm." A young Marine named Private Junho, who was waiting for treatment, overheard them. His right arm was in a sling, but his eyes were clear and determined. "Sir, we're not calm because we don't care. We're calm because we know what we're fighting for." "What are you fighting for?" Zoltek asked. Private Junho pointed to a picture on the wall. It showed a blue and green planet covered in white clouds. "That's Earth, our home. 3 billion people live there. They have families, children, dreams. The Magath want to eat all of them." He pointed to another picture showing the space station. This station protects the shipping lanes that bring food and medicine to 12 different species. If the Murgath control this area, millions of innocent people will suffer. Commander Kiwan continued the explanation. "Observer, you study different species. Tell me, how do most civilized races fight wars?" Zoltek thought about this. "They use overwhelming technology. They fight from a safe distance. They surrender when the cost becomes too high. And what happens when they face an enemy like the Murgath, who are stronger and more advanced? They usually lose," Zoltek admitted. "Exactly. But humans learned something different during our long history of war. We learned that sometimes being civilized means being willing to do uncivilized things to protect innocent people. We learned that the will to fight matters more than the weapons you carry." An alarm sounded, and Dr. Yuna looked at a communication screen. "The enemy is starting to retreat," she announced. "Our remaining ships are pursuing them." "Pursuing?" Zoltek was shocked. "But you have lost so many ships. Why not let them go?" Commander Kiwan tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "Because if we let them escape, they will attack someone else next. Weak. Someone who might not be able to fight back." Through the window, Zoltek watched a damaged human fighter ship chasing a much larger Murgath cruiser. The human vessel was leaking atmosphere and flying on one engine, but it was still fighting. At that moment, Zoltek finally understood the terrible truth about humans. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest, or most advanced. But they had something that made them more dangerous than any other race he had ever studied. They simply refused to give up, and that terrified him more than any monster ever could. The Murgath fleet limped away into hyperspace, their numbers decimated by an enemy they had dismissed as prey. In the aftermath, as humans methodically rescued survivors from both sides, Zoltek compiled his report. Admiral Junso found him, in the observation lounge, staring out at the debris field where so many had died. "Difficult day, observer. I came here expecting to evaluate a weak species seeking protection," Zoltek admitted. "Instead, I discovered something that terrifies me more than any predator I've encountered." "What's that?" Junso asked, settling into a nearby chair. "You don't fight like civilized beings," Zoltek said carefully. "You fight like ... like forces of nature. Unstoppable, unpredictable, willing to sacrifice everything for principles I barely understand." Junso considered this. "We learned long ago that the universe doesn't care about fairness, so we decided to care about it ourselves, and fight anyone who threatens that caring." Zoltek's report to the Galactic Council would be brief, but decisive. Humanity's application for membership should be approved immediately, not because they require our protection, but because we desperately need allies who understand that some things are worth any sacrifice to preserve. As his transport prepared for departure, Zoltek submitted one final request: permanent assignment as cultural liaison to humanity. He had come to study what he thought was prey, and discovered the galaxy's newest apex predators. The humans called it the human spirit. Zoltek would spend the rest of his career trying to understand how something so beautiful could be so absolutely terrifying.